Good morning from Melbourne. This is Peter Sweatman from the University of Melbourne. Welcome to our MAX panel session. This is the second one in the series. Today our subject is infrastructure readiness for automated vehicles. Subject dear to our hearts. Just want to, by way of introduction, for those of you who, and I know there are folks joining us from around Australia, from across the US, and from Asia Pacific, including Japan and into Europe as well. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of you. We are live and international. So MAX, the Michigan Australia Exchange, is a unique footprint for collaboration, I'm sure you'll agree. And we're all about innovation in mobility systems. We're inspired by global best practice. We're interested in where some of the gaps might be in mobility innovation, particularly the application of technology. And we're very interested in impactful roles for public agencies. And we have two representatives today who are leaders in their own states, countries, and across the globe from the public sector side of this transport transformation with technology. In MAX, we've been going for a couple of years, and we hope you're going to hear more of us. Connected and automated vehicle ecosystem is certainly right in our wheelhouse as far as our interests are concerned. We like to see that going beyond privately owned cars. We're interested in mobility services, not only for people, but for freight. We've done a number of reciprocal events in Melbourne and Detroit, and in the current circumstances, where we are locked down, but as we like to say down here in Melbourne, we are locked down, but we're not locked up. So here we are in a new lockdown. We're in lockdown number 2 here in Melbourne. So we can tell you offline all about that. I want to thank our producers in 2 places, Susan Proctor in Lansing and Susan Harris here in Melbourne with ITS Australia. So welcome to MAX. This particular panel is really intended to be like a plenary session at a conference. We're going to have some opening remarks from our 2 gurus. We're going to have questions, we're going to have discussion. We'd love to have your questions and comments, and we've already got a few. We'd like to see some more. So I'm going to remind you as we go through, please, there's a spot there to write in and so on. You can start right now, so please do that. I also want to say that this session is not all about the virus, although it obviously remains a shadowy kind of presence. So I'd like to handle that, the disruption caused by the virus, the uncertainty, via some discussion about scenarios. But we're not really trying to predict the course of the virus. The real point of this session is automated vehicles. That's what we want to talk about. And as somebody pointed out quite rightly yesterday, a lot of things are likely to change post-virus, but a lot of things won't change. And our interest in automated vehicles won't change. So we want to continue to focus on that. So despite the fabulous asymmetry of MAX, that is us having a state partnering with a country, we have a lot in common. We both love cars, but we know they're not always that good for us. And most importantly, we come back to safety time and time again as the source of our motivation. So just a couple of quick points before we get started with the presentations. I think we should bear in mind that the transformational power of mobile connectivity and automation cannot be overstated. That we need those public policy gurus to shape the technology, and that's exactly what we have here today with Paul and Dennis. We all believe in large-scale crash avoidance, intelligent traffic movement, and integration of transport modes. And please bear in mind that the global market potential of connected automated vehicles dwarfs all other transport innovations over the next 10 years. It is a massive potential market, and that's why there's been so much investment. And it's a difficult subject, and that's why we keep trying to discuss it and get somewhere. This subject had our attention before the virus, and it's one thing the virus won't change. Speaking of the virus, reasonable people see wildly different scenarios. Some say not many permanent changes if we have some scientific solutions in the short order. Some would say profound long-term changes. But at the very least, we're going to have a baseline scenario of probably vaccines, treatments, maybe next year, but continuing waves of uncertainty. And we'll talk more about that. So whatever changes are in store, we're probably not seeing them just yet. And I'd like to quote Warren Buffett, of all people, who's fond of saying, it's only when the tide goes out that you learn who's swimming naked. So the virus is a bit like that. But we know that with automated vehicles, we're not swimming naked, and we don't want to be doing that. I want to introduce the panel, two public sector gurus, great innovators, and interestingly enough, they both embrace both the infrastructure and the vehicle side as well. How important is that? And they'll continue to be transport leaders on the global stage during the virus and after the virus. We have Dennis Walsh, Chief Engineer for Transport and Main Roads here in Brisbane, here in Queensland, in Brisbane this morning. And Paul Adjaba, Director of the Michigan Department of Transportation, and I think he's in Lansing, but he'll probably confirm that. So I want to move to the opening presentations. This is really about how is connected and automated vehicles supposed to work, and particularly what is the role of infrastructure owners and operators in that space, and we couldn't have two more knowledgeable people. So Dennis, I hope you're ready and up there in Brisbane, and the floor is yours. Dennis Walsh.
Great, thanks Peter, and good evening to our American colleagues and good morning to our Australian colleagues. Hope everybody's well out there in these extraordinary times. Our thoughts go out to everybody. And hello to Paul, my fellow panelist. I'll start out with I suppose, a broader view of transport and where we were, estimating the impacts of connected and automated vehicles and their impact on our transport system pre-COVID. We've done some work more recently as a result of COVID, and I'll share that. And then I'll look to, what can we expect in the space of automated and connected vehicles coming to market, and then touch on some national work program issues that we're progressing here with National Transport Commission and Austroads. So this first slide that I've got up on the screen was done probably about 6 to 12 months ago, which was really looking at what was the potential of automated vehicles to the transport system here in Queensland, and in particular Brisbane. And we analysed 3 basic options. The first option was largely private ownership of automated vehicles, and this was looking at over a 30-year time horizon. And option 2 was a fleet-based model, and then option 3 was a shared mobility model. And as you can see, red's not great and green's good. Certainly in a private ownership model, the disbenefits to the community from a wide-scale uptake of automated vehicles was pretty negative, negative 22 billion per annum. And then if you look at the various scenarios in between, fleet ownership improves that, and particularly with carpooling as being a component of that. And then if you look at the mobility as a service type model, where there's large shared mobility occurring, a very positive outcome for the community. Now, so the conclusion really out of all this work was we've got to get people to share to realise the congestion benefits and the broader environmental benefits from these technologies. And so this is pretty poignant, I suppose, in terms of COVID, because the big question now is what's the propensity of people to share. I am encouraged that we're starting to see the recovery of our transport system. So this slide was prepared about a month ago, and you can see there that weekday and weekend volumes on our network in southeast Queensland, the purple line's the weekday, we're down 40% of travel on our road network, but we started to bounce back, and now we're actually just a few percentage points below this time last year in terms of traffic volumes on our network. Our public transport system, though, whilst it was down 85%, has only recovered to about 50 or 60%, whether you're on bus or on rail. So we're recovering at this stage, or we're very hopeful that we don't have to go down into lockdown again. But at this point in time, people are starting to migrate back, but we are seeing a preference for modes other than shared modes like public transport, some uptake in Uber, but the volumes are still down there as well. So what we've been doing is we've been doing a number of scenario modelling of what does our transport task to the centre of Brisbane, of which there's around 248, 250,000 trips per day, and that's just within the downtown or the central business district of Brisbane. And it shows the mode share back in October last year, and then anticipated mode share under different scenarios. So this one here is constrained public transport uptake. So it sees the public transport go from 46% down to 27% in June next year. So it doesn't fully recover, and we see particularly working from home playing a significant role there in carrying some of the load. Interestingly, the road-based travel doesn't get affected much at all in that scenario. The next scenario was really looking at an increase in active transport, and we've certainly seen active transport as a significant increase during the lockdown period for exercise, but this is assuming it might translate into movement of people for work. I think it's true to say that the figures that I showed before, where we're seeing the recovery in our traffic volumes on our network, are predominantly on our outer motorway network, where there's a large reliance on the that network for industry to function and for the economy to keep going. So the traffic volumes in and around the central business district are still suppressed. So they wouldn't be as suppressed as the public transport usage, but certainly they're still down. So all of this in terms of this bigger picture, I suppose is really around how does connected and automated vehicles play a role going forward? And certainly the role of the vehicle is not going to go away, but how does it play that role? And what part of the network is it going to service? We often see the rural, or talk about the rural-urban divide. Now we're talking about central business district and our greater metropolitan network divide, and what role will it play there? Some work that Austrade's has released recently, which is the Association of the Transport and Road Authorities across Australia, did some work that looked at what was the uptake likely to be of various technologies, and you can see there highly automated driving on the motorway, urban and then rural automated driving starting to enter the market in the mid-2020s, and getting to, percentages of a few percent up to 10% for motorway automated driving by 2030. The recent impact of COVID on the vehicle industry and the 20% reduction we've seen in new car sales is likely to slow that deployment, is what we're hearing. In conjunction with that, the other things that we're monitoring in terms of you know, what influences us as an infrastructure owner and operator is what's driving consumer choice, and the Australian New Car Assessment Program, which star rates our vehicles, which is aligned with Euro NCAP, foreshadows automated vehicle driving on highway and connected or V2X technologies being part of the 2025 test protocols. And that's just been recently reviewed, and it was 2024. It's been delayed 1 year. So we'll keep a watching brief on that in terms of what that might mean for us as well. All of this leads to, what do we need to do as road authorities and transport agencies to prepare for the advent of connected and automated vehicles, and what's the timing of that? And certainly when you look at advanced driver assistance systems, and what our statistics show us, that all but 18% of new vehicle sales in Australia in 2019 had lane support. So whilst there's still some conjecture over benefits of better line marking, certainly better line marking will assist our current vehicle fleet. So it's probably a no-brainer in terms of an investment choice for us as a road owner. Quickly, I'll just touch on some of the national work that's been undertaken by the National Transport Commission and Austroads. On the 5th of June, the National Transport Commission took to the Transport Infrastructure Council, which is our meeting of the National Transport Ministers, a paper which they agreed to in terms of establishing a national automated vehicle regulator, developing a national law that all states and territories would adopt, and also having a general safety duty placed on the entity responsible for bringing the automated vehicle to market. We've had national guidelines in for a while that are guiding various trials that are happening across the country. Predominantly, the trials have been of the small shuttle buses. There are some exceptions to those, and I'll touch briefly on what we're doing here in Queensland, but I know South Australia has also undertaken trials with different types of vehicles as well. We're looking at access for government to data, really important issue, particularly from a public good point of view. And then our Austroads program is looking at what is the changes that we need to consider to our physical and digital infrastructure. And last but not least, we're also looking at, is there a role for government to play in educating and training drivers in terms of some of the new technologies. So here in Queensland, we have a significant program of work called the Cooperative and Automated Vehicle Initiative, so CAVI for short, and it has 3 planks of work. Our Ipswich Connected Vehicle Pilot, which is about to get underway. We're about to call for participants from the public for that. We're just in a fortunate situation where we're coming out the other side of our restrictions here for COVID, so the timing is right in terms of getting our 500 participants on board for that, and we'll have 6 use cases for that connected vehicle pilot, and that's really helping us understand the changes we need to make as a road authority to our infrastructure, in addition to all the other enabling technologies such as positioning, high definition mapping, and the data handling and security. We also have a program of work called the Connected and Highly Automated Driving Pilot, which is our 2 Zoe vehicles. So there are Renault vehicles. One of them is not automated. It's really just instrumented and been testing our network as to how the sensors interact with our network and how various of our algorithms interpret the network and recognize various elements within the network. And we've got some learnings from that, which I'm happy to share today. And we've also got Zoe 2, which is our level 4 highly automated vehicle, which has done tests runs on both. There are 2 locations on our network in live traffic, up to 50 kilometers an hour. And that is, the Zoe vehicle is a vehicle you can buy off the shelf, but at the moment we're still in automated mode, required to operate it under permit. And then finally, our vulnerable road user pilot, which is a project where we're looking at how does the whole of this ecosystem come together, and how do our pedestrians and cyclists and other vulnerable users interact with these technologies, and in particular become a part of that connected ecosystem. So just by way of opening, just summarising that, we're looking at the transport system as a whole and how these technologies may impact how that transport system evolves, particularly post-COVID. And we continue to do work in both the connected and automated vehicle spaces, contributing to the national efforts here in Australia. Thank you, Peter.
Thanks, Dennis, and great and very current information. Really appreciate that. We're going to move straight through to my good friend Paul Adjuber, the director of the Michigan DOT. Paul, are you ready to go?
Yes. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Dennis, and stay safe from behind the scenes. Good evening to my American audience, and good morning to my Australian friends. Really, truly a pleasure to be part of this webinar. Today, I'm going to be speaking about our infrastructure readiness and how has COVID-19 affected that readiness. First, let me say, this is obviously a virus that we're still learning a lot about it as we go. And we, as a DOT, trying to adjust to some of the changing information that we're getting. For instance, when in March, we went to stay home, stay safe lockdown, we stopped accepting cash, and our toll collectors stopped accepting cash because we did not know if the virus is transferable through, touching of money. So we went to credit card only, but we've since learned a lot about it. We're back to accepting cash because it was creating a lot of backups in our toll stations. So these are some of the challenges that us as a state agency is dealing with and having to adjust as we go. But to talk about infrastructure readiness for automated vehicle, us in Michigan, as most of you audience may know, my predecessor, Cox Title, was very, very active in the ITS and CAV industry. And since the last administration, a dynamic new governor took up from there, and we've since advanced that readiness and moving the infrastructure forward in Michigan. Next slide, please. So what I would like to talk about is how do we get to where we are fully ready automated vehicle. First, we started with enhanced human capabilities through connectivity, automation to improve safety outcomes. We know there are 5 levels of automation. Obviously, I think the industry and everybody, even in the public sector, we agree that we're not ready to put level 5 vehicles out there yet. So how do we start building the public confidence from level 1, 2, 3, 4 before we finally get to level 5? I really think this is very important in our success because any mishap along the way, if we rush this technology out there, what we're going to see is we're going to have to pull back because public is going to lose confidence in that. Then the next step is the mixed operations with varying levels of automation, as I mentioned. How do we mix level 3 and 4 with existing vehicles out there to make sure that they're interacting with each other, and over time we transition out. And then the next level is the innovation and then mobility as a service, as Dennis mentioned. So I kind of categorize it into 4 stages. The first one is supporting physical infrastructure. We as a state agency has to build our infrastructure to be able to support this new technology. Then part of that is also supporting the digital and cyber infrastructure to make sure that these vehicles, once they are being put out there, are safe. Safety in the sense that there is no cyber mishaps. and then testing edge cases in a safe, controlled environment, which we're already doing. Michigan has two of the world's renowned testing facilities in here in our state. M-City, which is University of Michigan. Peter Sweatman and I were very instrumental in launching that. And the other test facility is the American Center for Mobility. These are test facilities that are a lot of vehicles, a lot of technology is being tested in a controlled environment. But what we've been trying to do is once these vehicles are being tested in this controlled environment, how do we transition them out there to the real world? And MDOT has been in the forefront of this. What we've done in most cases is provide test sites on the freeways or on any of our roadways to OEMs to test their product. And we've seen success. But to be able to get to allowing that kind of action, there's got to be legislation on the policy side to encourage users to want to do that. Because I think what we've done very well in Michigan is that we've encouraged our legislatures to be very proactive about it, to be open-minded and pass legislation that allows this kind of testing to go on. And we've seen some success. And then, as I said, consistent enabling regulatory frameworks. And that's part of why Michigan is on the forefront of this technology. Next slide, please. So what are the vulnerabilities? To me, I see a decline in road use, commercial and leisure, panic buying caused tumultuous effects on traffic and supply. Daily traffic volume on statewide roads saw a severe decline in March after the shutdown. Our graph is almost similar to what Dennis showed. We saw a drastic decline in number of vehicles on our roadway. And what that does is also revenue. It affects the revenue because we generate most of our revenue for our infrastructure reconstruction through a gas tax. With no gas tax, it makes it a little hard to make up that difference. And data shows a decline in load volumes for consumer goods, food, and packaging traveling to COVID-19 hard-hit areas. These are some of the side effects of COVID that we discovered. And what we've one of the things I think when we get out of the pandemic timeline, I think we as an industry, especially in the public sector, will have to rethink, is this still the right way to generate revenue for our infrastructure? Are there ways to monetize this CAV technology where the public sector also are able to generate money to put back into maintaining and fixing the system? And then the other piece of that is the maintaining cybersecurity during COVID-19. ITS infrastructure employ many devices, some never designed with our security in mind, and that is true. ITS network vary widely between states and localities. Address ITS challenges by focusing on areas where inoperability is critical to success. I'm on the CAT coalition group. Some of the things we are working on right now is one of those bullet points says, how do we make this a national policy? How do we create a framework where it's just like any other industry, that this is how we move forward in regulating the industry? And that is a big challenge right now, but we're working through it. But with this kind of issue, there's also opportunities to social distance, reduce overall touch points to a minimum, advancing platooning for supply chain. These are opportunities that could come out of the pandemic, COVID-19 issue we're having. And then the other piece is the movement of essential goods and people. use of autonomous vans to deploy delivery of food and medical supplies to hard-hit areas. We have a lot of rural areas that during this pandemic period are not getting all the supplies because obviously the supply chain was really affected by this. And AVs can address critical labor shortages as well. Next slide, please. So social distancing trend, spike in urban logistics, food and package delivery, emphasis on no contact pickup and delivery. We've seen a lot of that, and it's really generated a lot of business for the Grubhubs, Uber Eats, and all that, where you can order food now, and everything is delivered to you without you even touching it, even your groceries. These are the lessons we're learning from COVID-19 that I personally think once we get past this stage, it's going to really spur a lot of growth in other areas of our industry. And I really think it slowed us down a little bit on the deployment side, but we're also seeing some opportunities on the delivery side. Curbside management use for ride sharing is relevant in metropolitan Detroit, and that's what I mean. It's creating opportunities in one area, but it slowed us down in another area. But that notwithstanding, I think over time we will see a major growth in industry. Next slide, please. So this here is just to kind of show the connected miles that we have in Michigan. As I mentioned at the beginning of my presentation, part of what our legislatures have done very well is pass legislation encouraging that you get out of that controlled testing environment and try your product on our freeways. And we've been able to work very well with OEMs to deploy a lot of these technologies in our freeways. As I said, I-275, we've got a curve warning system there where there's a section there where there's a lot of accident history. We deploy this curve warning system to warn motorists of this, and we've been seeing some success. Road weather instrument is another one. Backup queue system where we're having a lot of rear end accident because it's on a blind spot. People driving through cannot see the backup, and you're having a lot of rear end accidents. And then the pavement, I-96 pavement condition is another area of freeway that we've deployed this system. Next slide, please. So what are we doing in our universities? As you can see, we have a lot of research going on in Michigan. It has joined forces to develop tests to treat the virus and create a vaccine. Converted existing labs to cause. If you remember, Ford was very instrumental in converting their auto plant into a ventilator machine producing plant. And these are some of the things that you've seen innovative action that's going on in Michigan. We have three major universities that are at the forefront of this: University of Michigan, Michigan State, and Wayne State, leading efforts to establish testing centers for first responders, healthcare workers, and vulnerable populations. Next slide, please. So what you see here is the technology activations grant. And I've got a grant to bus driver alert for predicting vulnerable actions. Grand Rapids, first ever digital alerts between fire, police, EMS. Detroit, road condition evaluation and early crack detection. Detroit DOC, we put a roadside unit out there to detect vehicle to pedestrian accident and what are the causes of that. I can go on down the list, but these are some of the things that we're doing, working with different OEMs to deploy these technologies to see how we can advance this technology. Next slide, please. Again, these are another more of some of the technologies we've deployed to working with other OEMs to advance the CAV technology. Next slide. And this slide is just kind of illustrating what Michigan ecosystem looks like in this CAV technology area. As you can see, without me going through the entire list, on the right side, on the education side, we have Lawrence Tech, University of Michigan, Michigan Technology, Michigan State. On the epicenter of auto, obviously Michigan is on the forefront of that. Those are just a sample of the auto industry makers that we're working with. And testing, we have TIDEC and MCD, American Center for Mobility. And then on the innovation side, the list is endless. So we've got quite a very robust ecosystem here in Michigan, and I think that's really helped put us in the forefront of this technology. And I commend our governor and the previous administration. We're not shy to take this leap of faith into this technology because we see it as the next frontier, and I think that the results are beginning to pay off. So with that, I will turn it over to Peter. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Paul. And, a whole lot going on there. There's no doubt about it. So please keep those questions coming in. We've got a great opportunity here. So please keep the questions coming in. We're going to move to our discussion, our fireside chat with these two great public sector representatives. And as you can see, from very different perspectives, given that they're joining hands on safety and so many other aspects of mobility for the future. I want to start off the discussion with just some favorite scenarios, if you like. So I'm going to ask Dennis and then Paul to maybe just to sketch out, given all of the everything that's happened in the last 6 months or a year, and given all the things that were happening anyway, and we've seen a lot of that. And we've seen a lot of, I think, in both presentations, that the virus has really kind of accelerated some things and slowed some things down and created some new things. So starting with Dennis, Dennis, what kind of scenarios are kind of forming for you in terms of looking out the next couple of years as to the world we're going to be in, particularly related to connected and automated vehicles?
Yeah, thanks, Peter. Look, I think we, hopefully we'll get a vaccine for COVID, and I'm happy to announce that yesterday, University of Queensland started human trials of a vaccine here in Queensland. So hopefully that's successful, and I know there's many attempts at that around the world. So in that context, I suppose this is something that we're hoping is a road hump rather than a block. My sense of it is that we will be, at least for the next 12 to 18 months, be living with some uncertainty. And so uncertainty makes it difficult for investment. And us as Australia are really a taker of a lot of these technologies. We don't have an automotive industry any longer in the sense of onshore manufacturing. We certainly have some really important players in terms of some of the OEMs being here, providing some smarts and input to global efforts, but largely we're going to be reacting to how these technologies unfold on a global stage. And so when you look at that as a road authority, you really need to look at what are the things you can do to prepare for these technologies, and largely our response leans towards what we can do to support the connectivity of vehicles with our infrastructure and get some early benefits in terms of uptake of some of those safety applications and some of those other applications that might lend themselves to improve traffic conditions and environmental outcomes, but largely safety. Safety is the, I suppose, the pandemic we've been having annually for the last century with the motor vehicle. You know, nearly 1 million people lose their lives globally as a result of motor vehicle accidents. And I know here in Australia alone, we have over 30,000 people go to hospital each year as a result of road trauma. So connectivity is really central to our efforts. And so in our scenario, it's preparing for that. We have a number of things that we have traditionally worked on in that space in our intelligent transport systems. It's understanding how they need to change and be added to support connected vehicles. And there's some new areas in which we're partnering with a whole range of sectors of the economy that we haven't done a lot of work with in the past. So there's a lot of learnings and development to do there. But for us, you know, getting those foundation pieces in place, the security, the positioning systems, technology, high definition maps, having in place roadside infrastructure. And I'm really encouraged to see Paul's, you know, quite extensive deployment of that already. And we know in Europe, there's significant efforts going on through C roads. So watching those developments and trying to get that coalition of the willing here in Australia to give us confidence as government or reach agreement to deploy those enabling technologies and platforms to support the OEMs to have confidence to deploy the technology into Australia. So in summary, I suppose our view of how this will unfold, the scenario is connected vehicles playing a really central role to the increasing automated features you'll get on our vehicles. Those automated features will take some years, if not decades, to permeate through, and we see connectivity playing a critical support role there.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. You know, fairly optimistic view there, and I think rightly so. So, Paul, scenario-wise, what are you seeing now?
Well, as I mentioned in my presentation, I see two phases going on here. The first phase that I think may slow down a little bit is the ride sharing part of automation. Because of COVID, you'll see that people are going to be very reluctant once we get through it to want to ride share with somebody. And that means more cars on the road, obviously. There was an incident here in Michigan, in the city of Detroit, where at the earliest phase of COVID-19, we had a bus driver died because of a passenger was coming in the bus and coughed on him, and he contracted COVID-19 and passed away. I think creating that social distancing in a ride share will be, people are going to be very reluctant initially, but I think over time, once the vaccine is out there, people get their confidence back. You'll see that we've got M1 rail that rides with Woodward Avenue, mostly for sporting events. I think it'd be tough to see a lot of people crowding into a metro subway, quite frankly, in Australia or in New York, or M1 rail in downtown Detroit, because of the fear of COVID-19. So we're going to probably see a little slowdown in that area. However, as I mentioned, you can see with that, there's been opportunity in the delivery sector, right? Deliver a grocery store to your front door, or pizza, or whatever the case may be, without you having to go out. I remember I was at a ITS conference last year, quite frankly, in Washington, and Continental was displaying this robot that really delivers your package for you, comes out of the vehicle, carries your package, and puts it on your door. You're like, man, this cannot be real. It's not going to happen, maybe not in our lifetime. And look what happened. COVID-19 happens. I would imagine that kind of technology, there's going to be a major push to try and get a technology like that out there. So I see that there's opportunities coming, and I think COVID-19 has also slowed us down a little bit, because I think 2020, 21 was going to be a year where we were going to deploy a lot of new technologies to show that yes, this is possible, take it to the next level. But I think COVID-19 has slowed us down. But I really am very optimistic that once we get past this stage, the opportunities are going to be there and things are going to open up again.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. And, you know, it was interesting to think about, as Dennis put it, the annual pandemic that's been going on for 100 years. And of course, total number of people killed on the highways has been pretty constant, just that we're doing that much more usage of the highways than we were 100 years ago. It's a lot safer in an engineering sense. Those of us who are engineers are happy to accept that, but in a real sense, in a public health sense, hasn't improved much really. So, and of course we could get rid of all those fatalities on the road by not going anywhere. So we accept a certain balance there, and you know, we're probably heading towards that sort of scenario with the virus as well. Moving past scenarios, just thinking maybe a little more specifically about preparation for automated vehicles and where we're at. You know, I think some of the things that both of our speakers have mentioned are kind of really some pent-up things that might happen fairly quickly after the virus. And I think Dennis mentioned a couple with the new legislation in Australia to move this forward, and so did Paul. So what I wanted to ask you both, because I think, you know, we've got a great opportunity with you two as national and global experts on the subject from the public sector point of view. But what does it really mean? What does leadership mean in connected and automated vehicles? Obviously, industry companies can make products, and lots, you know, universities can pontificate and so on. But what does, from your perspectives, what does leadership really mean? And maybe this time around we'll talk to Paul first about that. Paul, what does leadership mean to you in this space?
Sure. To me, I think leadership is being at the forefront of a new technology like this, thinking 2-3 steps ahead of a lot of the what ifs. What if this? What if that? How does this affect the industry and quite frankly the state and globally? And I think, again, as I mentioned in my presentation, that's one thing Michigan has done very well. We are now being recognized as the leader in this industry, in this arena, because we collaborated with the University of Michigan and the Federal Highway Administration to fund M-City. M-City was just, you know, 5 guys sitting around the room, vision of Peter Swebman talking about it, you know, with just having a brainstorming idea. Before you know it, it became a world-renowned test lab. And I think that's what leadership is. Sometimes you may be on an island on your own, but as long as you believe in what you're doing, that you think this is the right thing to do, you can lead. People will follow. And the way they follow is by you showing results. And I think that's what M-City, in my opinion, did to a lot of the, you know, how Michigan became the prominent leader in this area. And as I mentioned, then came the legislatures. We had a director and a governor that pushed the legislatures to really delve into this arena, to pass legislation to allow vehicles to be able to, automated vehicles to be able to mingle with regular vehicles out there without, you know, all the liabilities that goes with it. And I think that builds confidence. With that confidence, people want to invest and want to come to Michigan as a hub and try their product. And we've seen a lot of that. We've seen it over the years, and we continue to see that. And that's a good thing. So to me, in that, and the state of Michigan has been a leader in this arena for a while now, and we are not stopping at that. We're continuing to push the envelope to make sure we stay in that leadership position.
Thanks, Paul. This is starting to look like a bit of a setup, but let me ask Dennis about leadership. What does it mean to you, Dennis?
Yeah, thanks, Peter. And look, I concur with a lot of the thoughts that Paul shared. Then, really, for us, it's a slightly different situation in that we don't necessarily have the same capacity to create the level or scale of innovation sort of ecosystem that Paul can. But I think what we can do is create a supporting environment to build understanding. And what I mean by that is that probably largely to date, you know, we've come together pretty uniformly across the country around the regulatory framework and the laws, as I said earlier. So that sort of environment's being set up to give certainty to industry to work with us in terms of deploying these technologies onto the network. I think the thing that's missing for us in the leadership sense nationally here in Australia, and we're about to undertake a project nationally on this, is what are the likely business models here, and where do the benefits accrue from the deployment of these technologies, and where do the costs of deploying these technologies fall? And there's some choices that you need to make, I think, as a country around that, and you've got to keep revisiting those choices, but you do need to make some choices around where you're heading, what your direction is, and what you're going to invest in. Because if you don't make an investment, things don't happen. And you know, Paul's got some great examples from Michigan there of, you know, investment which is pushing things forward. And for us here in Australia, we're certainly seeing some encouraging local trials and demonstrations. But as a country, we need to come together and say, well, we can all agree on these things that need to happen. Let's get on and start doing them, because that's when industry starts to respond. And we've got to, I suppose, from a COVID point of view, it gives us an opportunity to take our breath a little bit, do that preparatory work. So, you know, whilst it might slow things down, that's not entirely bad thing, because we do have a lot of shared understanding and view of what our critical investments need to be. There's a lot of work to happen in that space here in the country, and there's, you know, globally we see that as well. You know, particularly in the connected vehicles, there's a division on some of the enabling technology. You know, those sorts of things hold us back, and we really need to come to some agreement, set that vision and direction.
Yeah, thanks, Dennis. Yeah, it is a somewhat different situation, but I think you touched on a similar point to Paul there about, I think he put it as monetizing this technology as it rolls out. That is, there's got to be a public investment in this, and even to do the research, which, as we all know, doesn't cost much really, but it's always scarce. Funding for research is always scarce. But Paul, I wondered whether you wanted to expand a little bit on your thoughts about monetizing the rollout of this technology.
Well, to me, this is just my frame of reference at the moment, is that as a public sector agency, we are all into this technology, investing a lot. As some of you might know, our governor came in, and her campaign promise was to fix Michigan roads, because we are 46 out of 50 states in spending per capita on roads. So, and she, you know, we went out and did a lot of campaigning to generate money by raising gas tax. There was a lot of pushback, and eventually, obviously, we did not get the 45 cents gas tax. And I think for us as a public agency, the question is, okay, If gas, the cost of gas is going up, or the ridership level is going down because we're encouraging ride share. That means less vehicles on the road. That means less revenues coming into our treasury for fixing the roads. What are our options out there? Here's a technology that, and I'll give you a good example when you talk about leadership. I think our governor showed very strong leadership when, on one hand, we say we need money to fix roads, and on another, she's saying, let's keep investing in this CAV technology. To some people, they may see it as contradiction. Why are you investing in new technologies when you haven't fixed your roads? But she felt very strongly about it, and we've invested some money in trying to do some demonstration project during the auto show this year. Again, that's what I mean by COVID-19 has slowed us down a little bit, but I'm hoping eventually we will catch up once this vaccine and people start getting their confidence back. But that's the challenge we face, that moving forward, how do we find other source of revenue to not only fix our roads, but to continue investing in CAV technology? So that's what I mean by monetizing this technology. There are things that, again, this is just my thinking cap on, where public sector can install some of this infrastructure at a lease price or something of that nature, where there's at least some more revenues coming into the public sector treasury to be able to continue to fund and support the growth of this technology.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. So we are running desperately out of time, but I just want to finish off with 30 seconds each. I'll start with Dennis. Predictions. When are we going to be connected and when are we going to be automated?
Thanks, Peter. So when are we going to be connected? I think my suspicion is that we'll see levels of connectivity from the middle of this decade start to become standard in our vehicle fleet. Of course, subject to maybe being a little bit delayed in the effects of COVID on the vehicle industry. Automation, I think we'll see the gradual evolution of automation. I don't think we'll see large-scale deployment of automated vehicles in mixed fleets on our network in this coming decade. I think what we'll see is particular operating domains where you can invoke automated mode, but that'll be an evolution built off the back of advanced driver assistance systems. The high-end automation level 4, 5, particularly level 5, and the operating domains going to be pretty difficult to pull off from a financial point of view. The business model looks challenging, and even more so now we've had COVID.
Thanks, Dennis. Very nice. Paul?
I agree with Dennis. I think connectivity is very important. I'd say probably middle of the decade, yeah, that would happen. I'll give automation the next 10 years. We should start seeing some level 3, level 4 out there. But to get there, I think we have to build the public confidence up to that level. And some of the things that are going on, not only Michigan, all over the world, frankly, is a good step to reaching that goal. What we were going to do this auto show this past June was to have level 3, level 4 automation vehicles out there and let the public get in them, take them from hotels to restaurants and around downtown Detroit. Let them experience it. Let them know that this is a real technology that's really coming. And with that, you build the public confidence slowly to start accepting that this is going to be our future reality. So I think Dennis is right. I'll say connectivity in the next 5 years and level 3, level 4 automation maybe in about 10 years.
Very nice. I want to thank Paul Adjuber and Dennis Walsh I'm sure you would all join me in the usual way if we were all in the same hall. Just want to remind you or announce, I guess, that our next MAX panel session, International and Live, will be August 10 in the US, August 11 here in Australia. It'll be on test beds for the future. And we touched on that a little bit, especially with some of Paul's remarks. So we're going to hear quite a bit about that at that point. So thank you all very much. I want to thank our showrunner here, Stacey Ryan from ITS Australia, and all of our MAX signatories and partners, the Australian Department of Infrastructure, Transport, Cities and Regional Development, the Michigan Economic Development Corporation, Austroads, ITS Australia, and my colleagues at the University of Melbourne. The report on the last session has been posted, and I think we're going to advise you how to access that. So, and there will be a report on this session as well. So I apologize for running slightly over time. I want to thank our audience across America, Asia Pacific, Europe, and of course here in Australia. So have a great day, have a great evening, and thank you all. And with that, I shall close the session.